Hello guys, welcome back to a brand new video. And it's been a little bit, but I'm back with a new wave of uploads. Starting off with my governor election prediction. Now, governor elections are extremely important to how a state operates. The governor of a state is basically like the president of that state. So, however a governorship goes can directly impact the state's legislative agenda. And over the next year to 2 years, 2025 and 2026, we are going to have about 3/4 of the governorships across the nation up for election. And they are going to have a massive impact across the country. So, how are they going to go? Well, I'm going to be laying out my predictions. So, before any of these get started, Democrats are sitting at three governorships that aren't up for election in 2025 or 2026, and the Republicans are sitting at 9. Now, I'll get started with the safe Democratic governorships, or the ones that I think will go Democratic by more than 15 points. First of all, California. I expect Kamala Harris to run for this. There's been reports that she's not entirely done with politics, and she might be trying for something else, and I don't think that is the presidency again. I think she's going to try and go for the governorship, and I think she's going to take it in a largely cluttered primary. Next, we got the state of Colorado. This is a state that's been shifting to the left extremely fast. It voted for the Democratic incumbent governor, Jared Polis, by 19 points in 2022, and I expect this national environment to be a lot bluer than 2022, so I think it is going to be by more than 15 points. Jared Polis is term limited, so he cannot run for re-election. Then we got just traditional Democratic states, Hawaii. Then we got Maryland and Massachusetts. These are two states that had Republican governors that were more moderate until 2022, when those governors were term limited, and then they switched to Democratic governors to fit the state's partisanship. And I think they will stay as safe Democratic states. And I think that's it. That is, so that puts the Democrats at 8 governorships. Now for the Republicans. These are just standard safe Republican seats. Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota. Nebraska could get closer if Dan Osborne runs, but for now, I think it's safe. Then Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama. These shouldn't be that big of surprises. The only real big surprise here is, if you don't really follow politics too closely, the state of Vermont. Phil Scott is a god in Vermont. He won like 70% of the vote last time. His margin of victory keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's insane. And as long as he doesn't retire, this seat is guaranteed for him. If he does retire, it could actually be competitive, just because the Vermont Republican Party is insane. Although the state went to Kamala Harris by like 35 points. They would actually probably make this somewhat competitive if they run a good candidate. In fact, in 2024, they flipped the lieutenant governorship and ended the Democratic supermajority in the state legislature, just because they're actually really good. So I think that could get competitive, even if Phil Scott doesn't run for re-election. But for now, I think he does. So now let's go to the likely Democratic states. So states that I think will go to the Democratic candidate by between 5 and 15 points. First of all, the state of Oregon. This is a state that just tends to be more red down ballot. It voted for Kamala Harris by like 14.5 points, but in 2022, it actually had a fairly competitive governorship. Now, that was largely because of a third party, but that was also just because Oregon is more red down ballot. And I think we'll see a similar thing here, where the Oregon governorship is just below 15 points. Not to mention that the current incumbent Democrat governor isn't very well liked. She's kind of unpopular. I believe her name's Tina Kotek. So I think she's going to win by around 14 points. Then we got New Mexico. This is a term-limited incumbent. New Mexico is a state that's been shifting to the left extremely fast. I'm going to sound like a broken record saying shifted to the blank extremely fast in this video, but that's true. New Mexico was an extremely competitive state in the early 2000s, and then it shifted to the left quite fast, and now it's a pretty likely Democratic state, and that's where I'm characterizing it here. I expect it to be it is going to be an open race, and I expect it to be an around D+7 to D+10 race. And then we've got the state of Illinois. This is a state that used to be safe Democratic, but kind of started to drift toward the center just a bit. It was Harris +10 in 2024, and it went to J.B. Pritzker, the incumbent governor, by, I believe, 12.9% in 2022. So the state has kind of gotten a lot closer, and I believe even with the Democratic-leaning environment, this is still going to be under 15 points, so around D plus 13 to D plus 14. Then we've got the state of Pennsylvania. This one's weird because Pennsylvania is normally a extremely competitive state. It voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and 2016. I voted for Dave McCormick in the 2024 Senate race. However, I expect the incumbent governor, Josh Shapiro, to be reelected by double digits, if not more than 15 points. It could be more than 15. It depends on if the Republicans actually really try for this. He won his election originally to become governor by, I believe, like 14.5 points, which is insane, but that was mostly because his opponent was crazy. But he has been an extremely popular governor, to the point where a lot of people are saying he could be one of the best possibilities for the Democratic nominee for president come 2028. And I believe if he wins this by a large margin, he will leverage that to become the Democratic nominee, or to at least try. And I believe he will get that. If the Republicans put up someone bad like his old opponent, Doug Mastriano, he'll win by, I think, like 20 points, which is ridiculous. But he's that popular, 60% approval rating. If they try to put up someone strong, I think he only wins by around 13 to 10 points. But I don't really know if they even try, just because he's such a strong incumbent that it would be like suicide. All right, so next we've got Connecticut and Rhode Island. These are two states that are pretty similar in this context. They both have incumbent governors that I believe will try to run for re-election, and I believe they will both win re-election by just below 15 points. They had competitive governorships in the past, especially for Connecticut. They had a competitive governorship even in a blue wave like 2018. Actually, I made a mistake. I just looked at 2022. Connecticut was D plus 12.9, and I think it's going to be just below 15. Rhode Island, actually, it was D plus 19. So, Loki, I'm going to switch that to safe. My bad. All right. So, Rhode Island, D plus 20 is safe. Connecticut, I think it's going to be around D plus 14, maybe heading into safe, but I don't know about that just yet. Then we got the state of New York. This one's weird because it was like D plus 6 in 2022, which is insane for New York. And it was only like D plus 11 for Kamala Harris in 2024, which is ridiculous for New York. The Bronx was like, or not the Bronx, Queens was like getting somewhat close. I think Trump hit like 40% in Queens. I think it was either like 40% or 30%, something crazy. That like no Republican should be hitting. Republicans have made a lot of inroads here, and this governorship is going to test that. Mike Lawler, I believe, will be the Republican nominee. He's the representative from New York's 17th, and he is a great candidate. He is very moderate and appealing on the issues. I think he will be a better candidate than Lee Zeldin. And on the other side, you've got Kathy Hochul, who I think will be the Democratic nominee. She's the incumbent governor. She could face a primary challenge, and if she does, this could become way less competitive and even head into like upper likely to safe. But as of now, I think it's around like D plus 8 because she won by 6 in 2022, and I expect this to be a bluer environment. However, the Republican nominee is better than 2022, and she's more unpopular than 2022. She is hated in the state. So I think it kind of evens out, and it only shifts about 2 points to the left compared to 2022. Next, we got the state of Maine. This is looking like a very contentious primary battle between Troy Jackson and Jared Golden. However, I think Jared Golden is going to take it. He's the current representative from Maine's 2nd congressional district, which is a Trump plus like 10 congressional district, and he won re-election as a Democrat. He is very moderate, and I think that like he is very appealing, and he is going to try. There are a lot of reports coming out that him and Troy Jackson are going to try for this governorship, and I think he will take it. And he's going to win by a massive margin in the general election if he wins the primary. He is probably going to win Maine's 2nd congressional district in his governor race. because I don't even think the Republicans would really put up anyone that's strong. I think he wins this by like 13 points. Then we got Minnesota. Tim Walz could actually run for re-election here. He's not term limited. And if he does, I think it's going to be around the same as if it was an open race, which is like around D+7 to D+9. This is a blue leading year, and Minnesota's around like a D+6 state on average. So I think we're going to see that. So like D+6 to D+8 if it's an open race, or if Tim Walz runs for re-election. And the final two likely states that I have for Democrats here are the two governorships that are up in 2025. I'll start off with Virginia. It's looking like it's going to be Winsome Sears versus Abigail Spanberger. Winsome Sears is the lieutenant governor, whereas Abigail Spanberger is the representative for Virginia's 10th? Wait, let me check. Virginia's 7th. Okay, never mind. I was wrong. But she is a crazy overperformer. She is a crazy overperformer. She can draw upon the suburbs and moderate Republican voters, which is a great way to win in the state of Virginia, where in places like Nova, there are tons of moderate Republicans that tend to vote Democrats, that voted Biden and Spanberger and people like that, and like Tim Kaine. And I believe she can tap into that. However, one thing that could hamper her here is Denver Riggleman. He was like the, I believe, like chief guy for Republicans for Harris, or he was like big in that. He's like a moderate Republican that supported Harris in 2024. And I think, and there's been reports coming out that he could run for this. If he does, I think he will eat at Spanberger's margin to the point where it could get down to lean. But for now, I'm going to be assuming he doesn't run, and I think it will be around D+6 to D+7. And then we got New Jersey. This one I know a bit less about, but it's been a state that's been shifting to the right very fast. It voted for Kamala Harris by only like 6 points in 2024, which is crazy because it voted for Joe Biden by 16 points in 2020. And the governorship here was only D+3 in 2022. Granted, that was a much more right-leaning year than what I think 2026 will be, but this is still, or 2025, but that's still really concerning. I do think, though, that this will just be barely above 5 points, so around D+6. That's right. I think New Jersey is going to be closer than Virginia. But if Denver Riggleman runs, that could change. And that is it for the likely Democratic states. All right, now for the likely Republican governorship, starting off with the state of Oklahoma. This one's weird because partisanship-wise, you'd be like, Oklahoma? Really? This is a state where basically 2/3 of the population voted for Donald Trump. He won every single county. So why is it competitive? Well, the Oklahoma GOP is unbelievably incompetent, especially in governor elections. This isn't a partisan take. Everyone will agree on this, okay? They have somehow made governorships competitive in 2022 in Oklahoma, and I have serious questions that they will be able to make this a safe race, which is crazy for the Oklahoma GOP. But like, they're probably going to nominate someone crazy like Brian Walters, the superintendent, and it's probably going to be lightly competitive, like R+13 to R+9. This is crazy. I'm not even kidding. Like Oklahoma might actually be competitive just because of how incompetent the state party is. Next, we got the state of Texas. This is a state that shocked a lot of people on election night. It voted for Trump by 13 points, I think like 14 if you round up. And then it voted for Ted Cruz by like 9 points. I was super wrong about this state. Basically, everyone was super wrong about this state. And it seems as though the left trend has reversed, at least in the short term. And the incumbent governor, Greg Abbott, is beloved in the state. And I believe he will win re-election by around 13 to 14 points. He has super high approvals, and with the current partisanship of the state of Texas, I think he wins re-election by a sizable margin. Then we got the state of Florida. This is a state that has trended extremely Republican over the last decade. It went from a really competitive state to a Trump +14 state, and all in the span of like a decade. and that's largely because of the Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, who is term limited, and I think he's probably going to run for Senate. But from what we see here, it's going to be an open race, and I expect the Republican nominee to probably be someone like Byron Donalds or someone else whose name I am forgetting. It could be Matt Gaetz. If it's Matt Gaetz, it gets really competitive. But if it's not, which it probably won't be, then it's like R plus 13, 14, and the national environment is the only thing keeping it from being safe. Then we got the state of South Carolina. This one could get kind of competitive. Nancy Mace is probably running for this, which is crazy, because she's not very well liked anywhere. And if she tries for this, she will probably win, but it will probably not be by the greatest margin, probably like R plus 11, something like that. Then we got the state of Ohio. I expect Tim Ryan to try for this. Sherrod Brown probably could, but I expect him to go for Senate. If he does try for this, though, it becomes a lot more competitive. Tim Ryan is a decent Democratic candidate, but he's nothing really special. And it's kind of hard for me to see him bringing this really close. So unless the Republicans nominate someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, although like don't underestimate the Ohio GOP. They are famously very hit or miss in their candidates, and they could nominate someone crazy, and this race could suddenly get kind of competitive. But as of now, I think it's going to be around like R plus 5 to 6 to maybe even 7. And the final likely state that I have for Republicans is the state of New Hampshire. Actually, no, there's one more. I forgot. But for New Hampshire, the incumbent Republican governor, Kelly Ayotte, won her election only a few months ago in 2024. And she won by 9, which was a crazy overperformance of expectations. And New Hampshire loves its incumbent Republican governors. Chris Sununu won re-election before he retired by like 15 points in 2022. And I believe that she will win re-election by around 13 points. The national environment probably dragging her down. If she does try to gerrymander the state or something, then that could get somewhat more competitive, but I still think it will not be under 10. It's not very competitive. And in a similar boat is the actual final likely Republican state, the state of Nevada. Like New Hampshire, they love their incumbent moderate Republican governors, and Joe Lombardo is beloved in the state. He has crazy eye approvals, and I think he's going to win a re-election by a massive margin, probably like 8 to maybe like 12 points. I'm telling you, he is loved, and I don't even think this is going to be very competitive. It seems like Democrats are actually going to try for this, which isn't very smart of a move, but it seems like they will. I think they're going to nominate someone pretty good. I forget his name, but someone good is running on the Democrat side, so it could probably be under 10, but that's kind of the most that I see. Yeah, so with that, with all the likely states filled out and the 7 lean states or below, so the states that I think will be under 5 points filled out, or not filled out, that puts Democrats at 19 governorships and the Republicans at 24. All right, now for the only lean Democratic state on the board, and I think it is the state of Wisconsin. The incumbent governor, Tony Evers, could run for re-election. He is getting kind of up there in age, but he could run. And if he does run or if he doesn't run, I think the race will be about the same, which is like D plus 4. He did win re-election by around 3 points in 2022, which was a crazy overperformance of expectations. And the Wisconsin Democrats have been doing a great job at keeping the state competitive. And I think that he is going to win re-election again, or if it's an open race, the Democrat is going to win this election by around 4 points. It could get down to 3, but I think it'll be around 4. Now for the lean Republican states. First of all, Kansas. You might have been surprised to even see this be this low, but it already has a incumbent Democrat governor, Laura Kelly, and she is term limited, so she cannot run for re-election. However, Kansas likes to split their tickets, and they tend to make races like this kind of competitive. I do still think that it will be Republican, and it won't be too competitive, but it certainly could get close with the right candidates. But as of now, just as a baseline, I'm thinking like R plus 4 is a good starting point for the Kansas governor race. So that's where I'm going to leave it here. And for the final lean Republican state, and that is the state of Iowa. I believe that Rob Sand is going to try for this. He is the only surviving statewide Democrat in office. He's the state auditor, I believe. And he is pretty favored. He has a positive approval, I believe, in the state. And the incumbent Republican governor, Kim Reynolds, is very disapproved of. She is not like that at all. So I think this race could get close. I think around R+3 is a good place to put it for now. However, it could get closer or more Republican depending on how things change. And if the Democrats do not nominate a good candidate like Rob Sand, it could just slip away and turn into a Republican, kind of like what could happen with Kansas. And that leaves the 4 true toss-up governor races, except one of them is not like the others. It is one that will only be competitive if a certain thing happens, which is what I'm predicting. I'm going to stop stalling. It's Alaska. Honestly, I think Mary Peltola is going to try for this. She lost re-election to Nick Begich in 2024 by around 3 points, but she is still loved in Alaska, and those voters would love to split their tickets. Democrats technically have control over the state, I believe, House or maybe the Senate. I don't know, one of the two. Just because Alaskans love to split their tickets. They're very moderate when it comes to that. And in a governor race, a race that is very not polarized, I think she could take it. So I think she's going to run for the governorship. And if she does, I think she can take it. It will be an open race. And I think it is the perfect opportunity for her. She could run for House, and then this would become likely Republican or Senate. But for now, I think this is her most likely path for what she's going to do. And I think that is going to bring Alaska to tilt Democrat. However, that could expand, or her margin could expand, or she could become not the favorite anymore, or it could just go straight to likely Republican if she does not run. So now for the 3 real toss-ups that are probably going to be toss-ups either way. Starting off with the state of Michigan. This one is really close. I mean, all 3 of these are. But Michigan, weirdly, because it would have been a lean to even likely Democratic governorship if one thing didn't happen. The very popular mayor of Detroit running as an independent, which will most likely split Democrat votes coming out of Detroit, preventing Democrats from really netting a lot of seats here. Now, there could be a lot of ways this could go. Democrats could just endorse him, skipping the primary process, which would probably lead to him becoming the strong favorite. Or he could just continue to gain momentum and split the vote, leading to Republicans winning this governorship. Kind of like what happened in Oregon in 2022, except Democrats have a lot less room to spare in Michigan compared to Oregon. Oregon is way bluer. Or he could still be running, but his campaign could just fizzle out, or he could even drop out. And I think if you average those 3 chances, I think the most likely possibility is that he stays in the race, but he doesn't take that much. And Democrats barely cling onto the seat. But I need to emphasize that this is just a complete toss-up race. And depending on how that independent campaign goes, this could easily go to the Republicans. But as of now, I think it is barely tilting Democratic. And for the final Democratic governorship, which one's going to be? Arizona or Georgia? It's Georgia. So, yeah, it's no secret that Georgia is zooming to the left. The southern Atlanta suburb trends, they sound very specific, but they can change an entire state drastically. The entire nation shifted to the right by 6, and Trump only managed to win the state of Georgia by 2.2. Anyone can tell you, even Republicans, that the trends in Georgia are terrifying. And I think that will come down to this race. It all depends on who the nominees are. Because Georgia at this point is so close partisanship-wise that just candidates can change this race. And as long as the Democrats don't nominate Stacey Abrams, and as long as the Republicans don't nominate someone like Brad Raffensperger, who's just a juggernaut, I think Democrats have the edge here. I think they're probably going to nominate like Lucy McBath or Jason Carter. And as for the Republicans, I forget the name, but probably just like a generic Republican. I think Dave Raffensperger is going to like keep his job as Secretary of State. But I think this governorship is going to flip. And that leaves the last governorship here. Oh, I do think it's going to go to a runoff, though. The Republican's probably going to win the first round. The Democrat wins the runoff. Story of Georgia in the last 5 years. And the final governorship here is the state of Arizona. And yes, I think it is barely tilting Republican. I got to be fair here. I gave 3 tilt races to the Democrats. I got to give one to the Republicans, and I think this is the perfect one to give them. Arizona is a state that has been shifting to the right, which is a crazy thing to say, because for the longest time we thought that Arizona was trending to the left. And then 2024 happened, and all of our dreams, everyone and all of the Democratic dreams of a blue Arizona were kind of crushed. Although this is only partially because of trends. Although it voted for Donald Trump by almost 6 points, which is ridiculous, is also just partially because of the candidates. Arizona is a state that cares about character. And the Republican candidates that have lost in the past were people that just didn't really mesh with Arizona well. Blake Masters, Carrie Lake, Donald Trump in 2020. These are just people that just didn't really mesh with Arizona's identity. But Donald Trump has actually been smart with who he endorsed, which is very new. He endorsed, I believe her name's Karen Taylor Robinson, and she is more of like a McCain Republican, which is insane for Trump to endorse. And she is actually like a decent candidate. And I think with how immigration is looking, with Katie Hobbs, the incumbent Democratic governor, not really being that good of a candidate, even though she is the incumbent governor and it's going to be a blue wave, I believe, or like a blue leaning year, I do think that it is barely enough just to knock her off. With how the immigration is going, with Katie Hobbs standing up to the Trump immigration policies, that could be that could go either way. Either that pays off amazingly because Trump's mass deportations backfire and public opinion switches, or it could just be that she is endorsing a unpopular position in a state that cares a ton about the border, and that could seriously hurt her. So as of now, I barely think she goes down. So in the end, sorry, I had to mess with the final totals here. I think I messed it up. But in the end, Democrats flipped the states of Georgia, Alaska, and Virginia, and Republicans flipped the states of Kansas and Arizona, leading to a net gain of 1 for the Democrats, I think, if I'm not missing something, leading to a 26 Republican, 24 Democrat state of the governorships across the nation. As for the national environment, I think it's going to be around like D+4 to D+5. It could go above that. It could go below that. We'll just have to see. However, that is like my baseline. I expect things to favor the Democrats. I expect them to be underestimated here because Democrats have been consistently underestimated in off years that aren't 2021. That's largely just because of coalitions. Republicans used to be the party of high propensity voting, which is why they did so well in midterms. However, ever since the Trump era, Democrats have been the party of high propensity coalitions, which is why they tend to do worse in presidential years and be overestimated in presidential years. However, they tend to do pretty good in midterms, like we saw in 2022 or in 2018, where they got underestimated and they did well. And I think we're going to see a similar thing here, just because of coalitions, and just because I don't think the Trump administration is going to be very popular. But yeah, that's my prediction. It could change so much. Republicans could become the favorites in Michigan and Alaska and Georgia, and Democrats could become the favorites in Iowa and Arizona. We'll just have to see. So many things can change. I am changing everything. Oops. But yeah, so many things can change. We'll just have to see. This election is 2 years out, but it's just fun to make my first predictions for it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And I'm going to have more videos coming out soon, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.